So being on the road, we gotta have our coffee. I know there's a lot of people like us that just have to have their cup of morning joe. One problem that we've run into on the road is that in the past, when we were at home in Tennessee, we would order our coffee, primarily from, shout out to the Nomadic movement. Their morning movement coffee is phenomenal, and we've been searching everywhere to find something that's similar to it, but our dismay, it's just not readily available. So being on the road, it's a little difficult to receive packages on a regular basis. So we've resorted to trying to roast our own green coffee beans. We found a dealer on Amazon where we can get green coffee beans from the same region in Panama that they grow some of these other coffee beans that we've become really fond of. So this is from Finca Lierdra Estate. I think it's on the side of a volcano in Panama. And we're gonna try to roast our own green coffee beans. We've never really done this before, but we've watched some tutorials on YouTube, we've read some articles, and it sounds pretty easy. And you don't need a lot of equipment. So basically, all you really need is something to heat the beans up in. We're using our cast iron skillet. You need a heat source, of course, and it's gotta be hot. You need something to stir the beans with, whether it's a wooden spoon or a whisk or something of the like. You just have to constantly stir. And then what's suggested after they're done is to pour them in a colander, a metal colander. We don't have a metal colander. I have a plastic one, but I'd rather not use plastic just because of the heat, and I don't want any of those particles to get in the beans. So we're just gonna use a metal bowl for the end and stir them to let them cool down. So let's see how this goes. So the first step is making sure that your pan gets nice and hot. Chemically, when you're heating the beans up, what actually is happening is you're changing the cellular structure, and as it goes through the different heat stages, something internally changes to the bean. So it shouldn't take long, 10 or 15 minutes if your pan is nice and hot. It's recommended to be somewhere around like 450 to 500 degrees as far as the heat source. Internally, the beans, you want them to get to about 400 to 435 or so, depending on your liking, if you want a light, medium, or dark roast. And as we go through this, we'll talk a little bit about the stages as what you should see when you're actually roasting the beans. Alright, so our pan has finally come up to temperature. We're sitting around about a little over 550 degrees. Of course, one of the challenges with our setup, wood burning stove, is the temperature is going to fluctuate a little bit, but as long as we keep it fed and we put the damper down, it'll stay hot, I think, long enough for us to roast some beans. So the trick when you're doing this on a skillet like ours is not to put too much in there, because then you're not going to get an even roast. So I'm going to do this in 1 cup increments, maybe 1.5 cup increments, just enough to kind of cover the bottom layer of the skillet. So now once you've got your beans on the skillet, it's really important to continue to stir. That's going to help ensure an even roast among all the beans. And as we go through this roasting process, we're going to notice different things happening to the beans. Their appearance, their smell, and what you hear are all very important. So the first thing you're going to notice is that obviously the color of the beans are green. They're raw, basically. You're going to see them change from green to yellow, to light brown, to a darker brown, to almost black. And if you let them sit too long, then they'll be burnt. What we want to listen for is something called the first crack. And the first crack is chemically what's happening in the beans. Carbon dioxide, CO2, is actually being released from the beans, and as you heat it up, the bean swells and then it pops just like popcorn does. So you'll hear the first crack usually around, if you're hot enough, around that 5-minute mark. And you want to observe, of course, the color and the smell of the beans as well. Because again, if you're doing it like this, it might not roast completely even, so all the first cracks might not happen right at the same minute. Alright, so the beans have gone from green to yellow, and they're starting to get light brown. It's been a little under 10 minutes, so that means we should hear the first crack here really soon. Okay. Now, if you guys are wondering about this setup that we have here, this is a wood burning stove that's portable. It is a Winterwell wood stove. You can go directly to their website or Amazon. We'll put a link down below in the description. There's a couple other retailers that sell their equipment as well. This is the large model, and it all breaks down real nicely and compact. It fits in the back of our van here. We have a box on the back that it fits in, and it doesn't take up much room. There's accessories that you can get for this. They have a small, medium, and large model. This is the large one, and I think an extra large too. You can put them in hot tents, and we actually even have an oven that goes on top of this. It's an attachment, an accessory. We've yet to use that, but we will, mark my word, and we'll do a video when we do. I'm excited to try it. So this thing has been awesome, because in places like where we're at right now, in the Black Hills of South Dakota, open fires are banned or not permitted. So this is a closed contained fire, perfect solution. And as you guys can tell, it's pretty cloudy right now. Our entire rig is electric, so we're not getting a whole lot of solar right now. So this is a great alternative to cook. It's energy efficient. We're not using any of our battery power. So I highly recommend this. I've been very impressed with it. It's held up great. We've used it now for, oh gosh, since January. We probably used it about 5 or 6 times, and it's been great. As long as you have the right wood to put in it, it works fantastic. So the beans have gotten considerably darker now. They're still light brown, but we haven't quite heard the first crack yet. It should be coming any minute now. Until then, you just gotta keep stirring. So as the bean heats up, internally the temperature has to rise enough to allow the bean to swell, and then it releases CO2, and that's that first crack that you're going to hear. After that first crack is when the so-called magic happens, and the sugars inside the beans start to caramelize, and that's when you get your light, your medium, your dark roast. So the longer they're on, obviously the darker in color they're going to get, the more flavorful they might become. We prefer like a medium roast, and there's nothing right here that's going to tell me that it's medium done, so we have to kind of play it by ear and by sight. So we're looking for the color, we're smelling it, and we're trying to hear also that first crack, which I only heard one so far. I'm kind of hoping the rest of them start going real soon, because they're getting darker and it's smelling good, but also visibly you'll see the beans start to swell and like literally crack open. So I'm seeing a few of them that look like that, but the majority of them not so much. So we're going to keep stirring. Alright, so I've been at this now for about 25 minutes. It's taking a little bit longer than I would have expected. My first thought is maybe I didn't let the pan sit on top of here and get hot enough and come to temperature. Our stove is hot, but the pan may not have been quite as hot. But as you can see, the beans are visibly getting darker. Now I've heard just a few cracks. We haven't had a whole lot of boom, 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 boom cracks like popcorn. Sometimes you'll get that. Several sources I've read say you may only get one crack, you might get a lot, you might get somewhere in the middle. That's why it's important to use your other senses, because what you want to see is the bean swells. Yes, it will actually literally crack open, but you'll also start to see the chaff, the outer shell of the bean start to separate. So there'll be a lot of debris in the pan too. So I'm starting to see a little bit of that. I'd say we're probably somewhere like that light to medium roast right now without actually being too scientific about it. We don't have a thermometer anyways to tell what the actual internal temperature is of the beans, which is what most, professional coffee roasters are able to control. So until then, I'm gonna keep stirring and just keeping an eye out and listening, because what you don't want to happen is to get to that second crack. That second crack, right after it, you got to be careful not to let the beans sit for too long, because then they're basically burnt and you ruin the actual flavor and chemistry in the bean. So be careful if you start hearing that second round of cracks. You need to pull your beans off. And they're going to continue to cook for a little bit even after you pull them off, just like a roast would. As soon as you pull it out of the oven, you need to let them sit and cool down for a little bit. But I'd like to see them swell and open up a little bit more before we pull them off. It's just taking a while. I think because it's cool outside too. This isn't covered. It's probably cooling a little bit faster than what I would like. So just prolongs the process. I've made my fair share of my own things in the past. I've made bread, sourdough, kombucha, bone broth, teas, you name it. And they all kind of have a similar theme in that good things take time. So while this might not be as quick of a process as I have read in some sources with our equipment and our setup, it's taking a little bit longer than expected, but that's okay, because, good things take time. And if anything, it puts stuff into perspective. Back in the day, when we didn't have fancy equipment to tell us exactly what temperature things were, or speed up fermentation processes, or machinery that made it easy, it really makes you appreciate what people had to go through back in the day to survive and eat and just have basic food and nutrition. Now, whoever thought of, number one, picking a berry on a coffee plant and then figuring out how to dry it, because there's many different ways to dry coffee beans. And then whoever thought of roasting that bean and then grinding it up and then pouring hot water over it. I don't know, it's kind of mind-blowing. I mean, I definitely don't have the intelligence to think, I think I'm just gonna go pick this berry, dry it, grind it, maybe pour some hot water over it and see how it tastes. So, I don't know, it's just a wonder to me how people figured stuff out back in the day. Who knows how long coffee's been around? Thousands of years, It's just really interesting to me. But going through things like this, knowing how stuff is actually made and kind of understanding the process behind it, what goes into it, it just really makes you appreciate that hot cup of joe that we all take for granted in the morning, I think. So a little bit of hard work, a little bit of time usually pays off. And I think there's lessons learned in that.
Looking pretty done there, man.
Alright, well, we're finally getting to the point where they look done. I've heard enough cracks and they're looking pretty dark, like medium to light roast. So we're going to go ahead and pour them and let them cool off. Remember, now if you had a stainless steel colander, that would be preferred, because a lot of the bean shells, the chaff, will come off, so it gets kind of messy. And they're going to continue to cook for a little bit even after you pull them off. So don't wait until the very last minute until you hear that second round of cracks coming to pull them off. So different sources recommend letting your beans off gas for different amounts of time. The minimum, it sounds like, is about 4 hours. They're going to continue to release CO2 for up to 2 weeks. So you need to let them off gas for at least 4 hours. We're going to let them off gas overnight. So about 12 hours is kind of like the common sweet spot that I've seen several different sources recommend. And then after that, you seal them in an airtight container. If you seal them before they're done off-gassing too much, it could actually build up too much pressure in whatever container you're sealing them in and either blow the lid or just not be safe. And it's not good for their taste either. Alright, so there you have it. Now we just have to wait and be patient some more. We'll pick back up in the morning, ground these suckers up, pour us a cup of coffee, and then we'll let you know the final verdict. Main things I think you should take away from this is be patient. You need a hot surface. You need a hot pan in order for this to go smoothly. And you have to constantly stir to ensure an even roast. And then just keep your eyes peeled because you may not always hear the first or second cracks, but if you know what you're looking for, you should know the bean should swell. It visibly will have the appearance of it cracked open. They should let off some steam. And then the color of the roast is also going to give away where about it might be in that light, medium to dark roast continuum. So we'll pick back up in the morning. Good morning. Looks like our beans sat all night. They are looking fantastic. They're smelling wonderful. They're grinding easy. One mistake we made when we trialed this time or two past couple days is we didn't let our beans roast long enough. Pan didn't get hot enough. The beans were still kind of green. They would hardly grind. They got really soggy when we put them in the French press here, so these are looking great. I know it took a long time yesterday to roast, but like I said, good things take time. So I am super excited to see how this turned out. Smells good.
And this one. And this one. I have it.
All right, here's the real test. That's good. It is smooth. It's not bitter at all. It's got a mild kind of chocolatey undertone to it. Not bad. Not bad at all. Well, there you have it, folks. Home roasted coffee. And it really isn't that difficult. Just be patient. Have fun with it. You can experiment with different types of beans from all over the world. I think I mentioned earlier these were from Panama. And I'm excited to try different types of green beans and just different methods of roasting, whether it's on the wood stove here or over an open fire. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to drink the rest of my coffee, enjoy some oatmeal, and welcome the day.